call this meeting to order. I guess we're 5:06 now. And we'll start off with any disclosures or of direct or indirect pecuniary interest, please. Hearing none. Okay, very good. Madam Secretary, is there any preliminary matters that we need to cover off before we get into the meeting?
There are not.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Could I have a motion for approval of today's agenda?
So moved.
Second, Ken.
Very good. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. So there isn't anything to report on from our in-camera meeting. So we are now in public session, which brings us to item 7. And Leanne, this is going to be super exciting for you, but it is time for the ward report. And this is probably the highlight of our meeting and of our weeks.
No problem at all.
Inspector Ward, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're going to be disappointed because I really don't have a lot to bring to the table.
No, that's okay.
The third quarter stats will be available for next meeting, so that'll be something we can dive into at that point. What else was I going to talk about? We've 2 weeks ago, I guess now, we've implemented our new traffic management unit. And so, I mean, we're starting off small, obviously, right? It's 3 members, but we're basically going to consider them kind of the tip of the spear. And they are going to be the ones that kind of deal with our higher end traffic complaints throughout the county. I mean, as you know, it's constant, right? The traffic complaints. And but this area, we need some type of traffic management unit. So with the recruits all here now, 12 recruits, and some of the things are starting, the dust is starting to settle. It was the time to start this initiative. And I mean, we'll be able to utilize them come winter for snowmobile patrols and ATV patrols. We're going to try and get them trained up for commercial motor vehicle stuff. So it's a good push forward. I mean, eventually it'll be nice to hopefully have the resources and the bodies to expand the unit. But we started with 3 and we've put some expectations out there and we'll see how it goes. But it's definitely needed, and it was time to move forward with that. So one of the other things I'll just touch on is because the Orangeville members that transitioned to the OPP are over their year now, they've all been successful. So they're all off probation now, which means that we can proceed with filling our crime unit spots. They've all been in there on a temporary basis, 3 months at a time kind of thing. So those interviews are actually going to be held this week to start filling some of those positions on a full-time basis. So that's kind of nice too. So
that's excellent.
What else?
I can ask you some questions if it would be helpful.
Sure. And I mean, I see here you're talking about the graffiti. I kind of took a look at that today, and I guess what we're seeing is it not just specific to Orangeville. We're starting to see some signs being tagged throughout the county, which means to me that it's not just local youth. They're obviously have wheels, right? So they're out there tagging certain street signs and road signs throughout the county. So we'll definitely follow up on that and see what we can get. And I know Orangeville has a pretty good camera system, so maybe we'll get lucky and catch something there that we can follow up on.
What is the fine, Inspector, if you're caught with graffiti or committing graffiti, I guess?
Well, we would go under probably go depending on circumstances, right? But I mean, at the high end, that's a criminal code charge of mischief. So that's what we're, that's the high end that we could use. And again, to the bottom end of deferral to a different program, some type of program within the community that they have to complete in order for charges not to be laid.
Great. And are we on the towing piece? I know the OPP has implemented a new towing strategy. Are you speaking to that today, Inspector Ward, or are you able to? Or
so I'm not going to dive into that. So, Inspector, I don't know how you want me to say it. You want me to say it Hoyinga Spong, Spong Hoyinga?
Yes, Spong is fine. It's officially
Okay.
designated
So,
on
so
Outlook,
Inspector Spong,
but
and-
it's just really hard. And
I know.
depends on
I'm
what
used-
name
I'm
tag I
used to
pull out of
saying,
the wash.
I'm used to saying Leanne Spong, so we'll stick
So
with
that's
that.
fine. That works just well.
So she's going to speak on a more of a high level overview on the OPP towing policy that's come into play.
Right.
What we've done then is Constable Roach is going to come to the joint meeting on Friday and speak specifically to how Dufferin's going to implement our piece of the towing. And I mean, we're still in the midst of putting it all together, obviously, right? With the applications and different things that have to happen. But we'll speak to that specifically on Friday. And I mean, today for Inspector Spong, she's just going to kind of touch on an overview of the OPP's policy.
Okay, very good. And Inspector Spong, are you speaking after this? After?
I can speak after if you want to carry
Sure,
on with your regular
sure.
business. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and I guess the other thing, Mr. Chair, I'll put in there too is again with the mental health piece of it, right? We're still working as far as working with the partnerships with Canadian Mental Health, DCAFs, and all these other agencies to try and get our embedded unit up and running. And CMHA have had a couple of glitches, and so we've had to kind of pull back a bit. But we're definitely, and nothing I'm going to talk about right yet, but just so you know, something is in the works with a partnership that may, if it works out, will be a great benefit to the community. So that when it comes to that mental health piece, I'm kind of passionate about that. Like I really see a need for it, especially an embedded unit. And so we're still working towards getting that and getting it up and running to serve the needs of all the communities. So,
okay. So some questions then, maybe. Black Cat, have you received your devices, or do you know the latest and greatest on that? Are they still hung up on a shipyard somewhere, or?
They're still, yeah. I will follow up this week. It's been a week since I spoke to Jim.
Okay.
Again, what he's telling me is they're having problems getting the brackets that mount the units on the poles. So, yeah, I don't have any further on that. It's kind of disappointing because I was really looking forward to having them prior to winter, because we can't really use them in the winter because the batteries don't hold the charge right in the cold.
Is that right?
So, but
okay.
Anyway, we'll rectify and we'll make sure that the first chance we get, we'll get them deployed and go from there.
Okay. And if I may, board members, I'll just have one last question for Inspector Ward. Protests. So we've had some anti-vax protests downtown. Some of the public have shared that they're concerned about aggressive behavior in the area, and some of the signs are using profanity. And I'm just curious what you would offer to the public, I guess, on that, and certainly just so the public knows and the board. I mean, Inspector Ward and I've already talked about this, so I'm not just surprising him with these things, but just curious.
Yep. I mean, we know for the majority of protests that we've had so far have been nonviolent, small in numbers, compliant. And I mean, from a policing standpoint, we have to look at it from the fact is, I know the public think we should swarm it with police. The problem is in these protests, the more police that are visible, the more that the protesters will try to act up or get us to engage with them, right? So less is more. At all these protests, our provincial liaison team has been present. So they're plainclothes officers that are embedded, so that there are police on the ground, you just won't see them. I know we have some information that there's another protest scheduled in November, and we're putting an operations plan together for that one. But again, right, the motto is less is more for these protests, because the more police, the longer the protesters will stay to try and agitate and irritate and engage the police to get some media coverage out of it. And the more we stay back and just kind of monitor it, usually it ends peacefully and we go about our business, right? So
Very
But
good.
we are engaged in those for sure.
If protesters are on the street, is that something that the police would intervene on and suggest that they stay on the sidewalks, that sort of thing, or?
I mean, if they're causing disruptions to traffic and
Correct.
things like that, right? But if they're peaceful and not causing any problems to traffic, the flow of traffic or anything like that, we're probably not going to engage them. If there's an issue where they try to do something more or try to, trespass or anything like that, then yeah, we're definitely going to engage.
Very good. And then the last piece is, I imagine you're going to say it's freedom of speech, but if there's provocative wording on signs or profanity on signs, that's their right to carry those signs?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not, and again, we're not going to get into a Donnybrook over words on a sign, right? Because in the end, we'll be the ones that are blamed.
Yeah, understood. Board members, any further questions for Inspector Ward on these subject matters? No? Okay. We are going to talk about traffic later on in this agenda, and I assume, I know Constable Roach is on the call, and would she be speaking to that at that point, Inspector Ward?
Oh, I don't think she was planning to. No, she's just kind of here to listen to Inspector Spong's presentation.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, why don't we talk towing then?
Okay, let's talk towing, and I can go over some of the timelines to help everyone understand what we are putting out there and when we expect it to be in full swing. But overall, really, it's well known, I think, through the media, through all the events that have led up to this, that criminality within the tow truck industry, it has escalated in the recent past, and the scope of the criminal activity is something that we've taken a very serious look at. It includes violence and vandalism and fraud, and certainly poses a threat to the public, the tow industry members themselves, police officers, and many of our road safety partners that we're dealing with. So since June of 2020 is when the OPP first partnered with the Government of Ontario's multi-agency towing task force. And while that task force is exploring a lot of other options, those include tow industry licensing, some of the regulations, some of their technology-based solutions, the OPP has forged ahead in implementing a tow program to help mitigate some of the identified issues that have come to light within our own OPP policed areas. So overall, we've launched our tow program, or are in the process of launching the tow program as part of our own commitment to public safety, as well as helping to mitigate that increase in criminality right across the province. And we know that these actions, they do carry some significant operational and investigative and educational components for the OPP and municipalities, as well as police services boards. And there are things that have dramatically changed in the way that we engage the towing industry members and the consumers who rely on the OPP to assist providing that safe, ethical towing and storage services. And that's primarily what we're looking at here. Among some of those changes that we've initiated, the OPP has the use of a new mandatory towing information record report, or TIR. And it's an electronic document that's going to be used to capture every OPP interaction that relates to tow truck drivers and towing operations. So that information that's captured in our TIR, for lack of saying it over and over, will be critical to our OPP-led joint forces operation and looking at the criminality across the province, as well as lending a tool for the detachment commander to have a look at activity within their own detachment area, and something that they could likely work with their boards on how that reporting piece would roll out. Among the new requirements are tow and storage service operators, or TSSOs, as you'll see the acronym used in the future quite a bit. They have to submit to us an annual application to provide tow and storage services to the OPP for a calendar year. So I have copies of our application certainly I can split it on a screen if you haven't seen it, but it is available on the opp.ca website, is available for our towing operators to see, as well as it's part of our timeline and something that your detachment commander will have dispersed amongst the community members for them to have a look at, beginning to collect that TSSO approved list, or tow list for a short. There's a lot of information that they have to provide on this. I'm looking at the application now. They're going to have to provide their information relating to the ownership, the registration, the license, vehicle, equipment, and insurance, as well as some other details in the application, and a signed release that authorizes the OPP to conduct a criminal history background check as part of something that's also to be required, so that we know who we're dealing with within the towing and storage service operators community. The application package will be used to create a new list of, or provide with them a list of certain equipment that they have to be able to provide. And within that package, it also has guidelines for providing the towing services to the OPP. And again, that is available at our opp.ca website for your review, or any questions, FAQs are on that website as well under the tow service industry for any of your community members that may have questions that they're asked. So one of the pieces on our timeline here that's really important is that their applications must be returned back to the local OPP detachment by November 1st. Of this year, of 2021. From there, the OPP is going to assess the applications and provide the tow and storage service operators and towing associations, where applicable, information and notice, as well as any successful applicants that will remain on the OPP tow list for 1 year will be notified. Now, there may be situations where those TSSOs that are applying are subject to suspension or removal from the list in certain circumstances, and that notification will go out to any applicants once that assessment is conducted by our provincial traffic operations in conjunction with the detachment commander. There are a couple different things that are happening along in the background that's important to know as well, because you might hear something differently going about within the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. And considering your close proximity to the GTA is something important to know, I believe. The Ministry of Transportation is implementing a tow zone pilot on defined sections of the 400 series highways as well within the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. And what that has, that pilot is looking at is helping to support really the development of other standards and practices and regulations for towing and storage sector within those areas, considering the great volume of traffic that is there, because there's certain things that TSOs will, certain parameters that TSOs will have to operate within, certain parameters that the OPP will be operating within as well on OPP initiated types of tows. And there's a couple different ones that I can get into there. But really, we have to look at other procedures that are going to happen in that designated type of zone. So currently, those within those identified 400 series highways will be exempt from the OPP tow program and will be assessed in a different manner, essentially, as we go forward as part of that other pilot. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that pilot is ongoing, given the proximity that you have. But otherwise, we will continue to work out the mannerisms. I think I'll speak to the timelines next on some of the things that we have, and I can split this into, I don't know if Teams, I usually use Skype. I do have the timelines here if that's something you want me to just speak to.
You can share your screen for sure. Yeah.
You're not very technical on sharing the screen.
That little arrow button right beside leave. Don't press leave.
Open to share tray. Okay. I'm going to share the timeline document that I have open here. If I can do that.
Yeah, while we wait for that to
quickly
come up,
going
guys,
through-
if I could, just for fellow board members, we do have someone on the line that would like to ask a question. And I think just based on the fact that we've got timeline constraints of 6:15, I'd like to enable Mr. Howes to ask a question after the presentation, if that's amenable to the rest of the board. Does that make sense?
When will we be asking questions?
We will, and then I'll just
Yeah,
ask.
that'd be difficult,
I know
yeah.
Mr. Howes would like to ask a question. I don't know what it is, but I just like to do it while we have the inspector with us. And
No problem, and I'm free to stay on as late as you need me as well if
thank you.
Inspector Ward has to leave. It's saying having trouble loading my feed, so I'll just speak to that
Okay.
for timeline. But November 1st, all applications have to be in from our TSSOs. We did have a media release that went out on September 15th. Currently between September 15th and November 1st is what the timeline that our detachment commanders are actively engaging with tow services across our OPP area, across the province, working, and they can assist you with any application questions if members have that, but those do have to be in within November 1st.
May I ask, Leanne, is that
Yeah.
that's when it would have gone out to the tow association, that the November 1st date? As I hear it today, I think, oh, that's pretty quick, November 1st, but they
Yeah.
actually knew this on September 15th was when it went out. Okay.
September 15th was when it was released in our media release, and the formal notice went out to all the tow associations that the application packages were available on opp.ca. So
In
they let
mid-September.
that notice on September 15th.
Very
Mhm.
good.
And Mr. Chair, just so you know, there is no towing association in Dufferin County.
There used to be a towing association in Dufferin County under the old setup.
Used to be is the key words there.
Yeah,
It is not up and running now.
correct.
Good to know. So then during that time, that's the evaluation time for detachment commanders to have a look at what information has come in. There'll be certainly engagement with myself and PTO. By November 30th is when detachment commanders will then afford those approved lists to myself once finalized, because there is some work that they have to do in the interim as far as going out and inspecting certain areas, ensuring the information is correct, ensuring they have a look at the storage facilities if that is applicable and something that they've included in the form. So they need a bit of time for that. November 30th, once those come to me, again, we'll go through another vetting process, have a look at all of the information across the region. And then by December 15th, the regional traffic manager, which is myself and our other managers, my cohorts shall forward the approved lists back to the tow associations or other relevant tow operators in the area, detachment commanders, to our provincial communication center, so they have those relevant lists. And by January 1st of 2022, the new tow lists then officially come into effect. So that's the timeline for that.
Do we want to pause there and see if there's questions by the board? I know there's more to come, but board members, any questions at this point?
It's Ian McSweeney. I just had a quick question. Leanne, if you could cover at some point in your presentation, what is the licensing authority for the towers or regulatory body? Is it the OPP that issues the license and regulates this, or is it the ministry?
As far as the licensing goes, what we are doing, and I'm going to grab a copy of the application here to see if I can explain that. It's overall, for now, it's the only way for an operator to get onto the list that we would be able to use them. This doesn't exclude them from coming to you and having to be licensed or bylawed within a certain area that perhaps there's other things that they would be engaged to do, as far as having to tow a vehicle that may have broken down, within somebody's property, or they're operating within your community. We are looking at this tow and storage service operators from an application standpoint for only OPP police requested towing.
I see.
So this is getting them on the list for that. I know there are bylaws that are in place across our region, across the province, and people are having a look at how those bylaws will align with our information. I think that is a very good idea, having a look at what it is we're asking for on that so that they marry up in some way. But really, when it comes down to what a police requested tow is, that's what we're interested in and when we're using them for certain things. So if we're looking at the two types of a police requested tow, there really is a legislated tow and then what we would call a non-legislated tow. So a legislated tow is a tow that is requested by us as a result of a legislated authority. So an example of that would be a vehicle impoundment for an impaired driver or stunt driving, or perhaps the vehicle is needed for evidentiary processing. So that would be what we call a legislated tow, and is one of the two types of police requested tow. Then the non-legislated tow is one that's still requested by police, but it's on behalf of the vehicle owner, who is not present or couldn't authorize that tow. So that would be a situation where a person is injured in a serious motor vehicle collision or is incapacitated for some reason. Perhaps they're so impaired to the point that we just have to move ahead and have that tow remove that vehicle. So getting onto this list, this TSSO approved list that the OPP will use is specifically for those two types of police requested tow, your legislated and your non-legislated.
Great.
So are we operating under legislation, or are we doing it because there's no one else that can give us that authority and we really got to get it out of there?
Understood. Member McIntosh, did you have a question?
Yes, a very quick question, Mr. Chair. One of the biggest problems we have in Dufferin County is chasing of accidents. Now, you referred to a list. Is that strictly what OPP is going to be using, that list? So this will do away with the chasing issue?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And in fact, tows are not to be able to be clustering on on-ramps and areas where they'll be in closer proximity so they can try and be the first tow at the scene. It's really to set out to protect the public from number one, tow operators getting there that may not have the proper equipment, licensing, registration, or who do they know they're really dealing with before we even were able to get to that scene, to make sure that they meet all the HDA and commercial motor vehicle requirements. So their mandatory annual safety inspections, everything else, as well as to ensure that we're following a queue. So a TSSO can only be requested once per shift by the detachment. And that's part and parcel to why there's also that other project that's going on within the tow zone in the greater GTA to really see, okay, is that going to be feasible? Because we're trying to roll something out that can work right across the entire province. So requesting a tow where I'm sitting in this job right now, but typically I'm the detachment commander in Haliburton Highlands. So requesting a tow in Haliburton Highlands is going to be significantly different than requesting a tow in around the greater GTA area. So they do have to run some pilot projects as this rolls out, but it was better for us to get this program out and underway and in place so that we're ready to enact it on January 1st to try and mitigate those very things. Because the chasing of tows is also something part and parcel. And we're not saying that there's really great reputable companies out there, but sometimes they themselves are being undermined by the very mere fact that someone else is getting there quicker. And then that's led to all kinds of consumer issues where there's overcharging, there's other things that happen on the side of the road, and quickly before they know it, the storage fees are racking up. So a myriad of issues and concerns that have rolled into that have been part of developing this tow program.
Got it.
Thank you. Glad to see.
Yeah, me too. If I may, I gathered everything and understood and whatnot, but the once per shift thing, I just didn't quite grasp that. Like, to me, wouldn't you, if I'm an OPP officer and I'm at a call and legislated or not, and I've got 10 tow truck companies, don't I start with one, and then if something else happens, I go to two, and I'd work my way through that in the day, and I might have 5 tows, God forbid, on a shift, but by the end of the day, I'm 1 through 5, and somebody else starts at 6 through 10.
Exactly. That actually, I'll clarify that. It's not just TSSOs in general, it's moving through that list. So we only go back to the one company once per shift, unless there has to be some adjustments locally based on what you have. So like I said, Halliburton Highlands would be very different. We will have to go back and use that discretion, but there is a guideline and a framework that's being rolled out with this, so that you're not using the same tow service provider consecutively. So it will have to roll through a shift. So ideally, we're tapping into that one tow company once per shift by that operator, by that police officer. Then it's being moved on to the next one. So the overall list will be available for our dispatchers, our provincial communication operators, and they'll be able to help also manage that dispersal and that request as we move through those lists.
So what if we had 10 tow truck operators and now we're out? Do we go back to number 1, or is that just prohibited? Like, what do you do?
No, we would have to. Yeah.
Go back to number 1.
Common sense at the end of the day would still have to dictate that we're just trying to have some kind of framework that's really hammered out specifically, so no one's jumping queues and how we roll that out. There's still more work being done on that, and that's part of the discussions that actually I'm going to be having with some of my cohorts, my regional traffic managers, in our upcoming meeting with our provincial traffic operations, to see some of the specifics of that and get ready so that this can roll out on January 1st across the province, to look at a place that might only have 2, because there are some places that might have 2. Or that might have 25, because we can't always start at number 1 either, and you never use number 20, 21, 22. So we have to have a very equitable way of tapping into the tow services out there. It's really to mitigate the fact that some tow services were being engaged repeatedly. And then, so this is covering off that fair dispatch, but also protecting our own officers as well, to make sure that with some of the things that have happened and were highlighted in the media, that is also mitigated. We're reducing that risk.
So those hanger-oners, the first on the scene, or those tow truck drivers that are there, if you had tow truck driver 3 and 6 on scene, you would still say, like, guys, I'm sorry, you're out. I've got to go to number 1 on the list.
We will be requesting the tow, and we will know who's coming. And then there's quite a form that shows all of our interactions with every tow. So that can be monitored by the detachment commander or the operations manager, the sergeant, in fact, to make sure that we are tapping in and requesting our police tows equitably and fairly.
Of course. And
if we start to see a pattern where things are changing, that's why this is rolled out the way it has. That's why the tracking systems have been implemented, to make sure that anyone can tap into this and look at this look at the TIR, or Towing Information Records report, to see what exactly was the interaction of the police, public, tow service provider. What was provided to them? Did the officer go through all the steps as well? And are we distributing in a fair and equitable way, and a way that under public scrutiny isn't going to come under any kind of complaints?
Got it. And if I may, if the town has a bylaw, and in Orangeville we do not have a bylaw just yet, but I know there's a bylaw being worked on by the clerk's department, what would the OPP do there? Would you you now have a policy. If the town had a policy, hopefully there'd be consultation, but what if they don't quite dovetail perfectly?
If they're not dovetailing perfectly, and really I've had a look at a lot of the bylaws that are out there, and basically we've built a lot of this off of that, where you already have the list of all the tow operators, the companies, the plate numbers, everything else that's in there. But at the end of the day, this tow program for the OPP on how that we reach out and make a police requested tow, this is what we follow.
Yeah, we've had quite an issue here, and it was my goal as we were trying to go from OPS to OPP. I was trying to say, guys, like we need a policy. We need a policy. Before your organization came to town, I wanted one in, and we just haven't made it. But I think the clerk is close. So hopefully there's consultation.
And please tap into all the resources that we have online. It's all there. The questions and answers are laid out in a format that hopefully the committee that's been working on this over this past year has everything answered. If there is a question that arises that isn't covered within there, by all means, reach out through your detachment commander. I can find that answer from the top of the chain on our provincial traffic operations. In fact, our superintendent within Central Region, we have the benefit of our new superintendent who has just started with us for a week. He was part of the tow committee. So he's very knowledgeable on this. So if there's any questions that you have, I know we'll be able to turn around that.
He's coming to the joint board on Friday, Leanne.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So just, Mr. Chair, I'm reading some notes here, and one of the questions I see is, what if there are municipal bylaws that cover a portion or all of the detachment jurisdiction? And basically how it's answered is saying the TSSO will comply with local license, bylaw requirements, and the OPP tow program. Any discrepancies between the OPP tow program and other licensing or bylaw requirements will be reviewed by the local detachment. So ultimately it will come to me. I will consult with Leanne, and we'll make a decision moving forward on how we're going to do it.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Board members, any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Member McIntosh, did you still have another comment?
Yeah, just a suggestion. Maybe the town shouldn't keep pursuing a towing bylaw. Maybe we should just stick with the OPP one. It sounds like it answers all our concerns with the town. But whatever your thoughts are as well. And what was your idea to have a towing bylaw?
It was.
It was your idea.
In
and
fairness,
I supported you.
Yeah, we had the Wild Wild West here before, and in my, other people would disagree with that, and maybe that's too aggressive of a stance, but we didn't have a policy, and it was difficult. So that's all I'm after, is to make sure that people are treated fairly and it's safe and
it's going to come down, Mr. Chair, it's going to come down to officer training too, right? I mean, that kind of falls on us as well, to make sure that our officers are very well versed in these new policies. So there's going to be hiccups, but at the end of the day, once we get it smoothed out, it'll be exactly the way it should be, fair and equitable. And I think over the last few years, and not just in Dufferin, I've seen it in other areas, that we kind of took the easy way out when it came to towing. And I think now that's cost us, and we've had to really tighten down and put scrutiny on it. And this is where we're at. And again, like, it's a training issue for the officers to learn how to do it properly. And I think that's where we're going to get to.
And if I may, just to build on that, it's also a transition period for all the stakeholders, including the tow operators as well. So I would suspect there'll be a transition period where it can be expected the officers will also have to educate the tow drivers while interacting with them. So I would expect that if there were those situations where that chasing is happening or they're showing up on the scene, it's a good opportunity for us to gather that information. Is there a trend? Is there certain companies that perhaps we have to have more engagement with, or a special education session on? Or just overall engagement and let people on the side of the road really know even about the new program. Because yes, there's been a lot of media piece on it. Yes, people have gone out on it, but as things change and people change positions, sometimes that can be forgotten. So at the end of the day, we're going to be having those interactions on the side of the road and make sure that everybody gets up to speed on this as we roll it out.
That sounds great to me. If I may, a lot of our tow operators are well known in our community. We know who those people's names are and recognize them and know their businesses. So as long as they're being treated fairly and are in the queue, I imagine that they would think that's okay. And I'm sorry I cut you off, Inspector Ward. Go ahead, please.
Oh, that's okay, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to throw out there too, one of the things that local bylaw can deal with outside of the policy is basically things like equipment, deportment, behavior of the tow operators, and also can have an anti-chase written right into it, right? So that's something that's still important within your bylaw that doesn't cover off in this OPP policy, right?
Got it. So at this time, if there's no further questions, and I know this is a little bit of order, just trying to be respectful of people's times, I have Mr. Howes on the phone, and Dan, I'm wondering if you could, are you able to unmute Mr. Howes and he can ask a question or make a comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, he would have to unmute himself. He is joined by computer, so if he just hovers on his screen and clicks on the microphone button, he would have had to mute himself.
Very good. Mr. Howes, are you able to unmute yourself and have your say? Probably panicking, wondering it's
yes.
Two buttons to the left of leave, where you see leave.
There
you are.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, you're live with us now, sir.
Super. Thanks for having us. Just maybe a two-part question. You did go in depth that answered some questions that we're very curious about. One thing is with the inspector, he is correct. There is not an association right now, but we haven't gone anywhere, and we would like to keep it strong. Having said that, when it comes to this list, which Jennifer's done a great job on, we're all for the list. We've had that for 30 some odd years in Dufferin County, and that's both the best way to control things. My question is that who is going to control the dispatch? Is it going to be the comm center, or are you asking the association to get our answering service back up and running and have a 1-800 number that the comm center could call to have a truck dispatched? Where do we stand with that? Are we? It may be, now that things are going province-wide, for the comm center to control that. We're just wondering how that was going to go down.
So I'll answer that, and Leanne, you can jump in if you want. But so as far as I know, the province is too big for the comm center to manage that, right? So their responsibility will be to dispatch the tow. So if there's an association with a single number to call, then that's perfect, right? They will call, the association will go next, who's ever on the list, and dispatch that tow. If there's not an association, right, then I'm assuming that the comm center will have the list for, say, Dufferin County, the approved list, and they will just go to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, calling that tow company to have them dispatched. I mean, ideally for us, and I know Leanne can. I've worked in both areas where haven't had an association and have had an association, and I'll tell you from our standpoint, if there's a strong association that deals with those issues, it makes it a lot easier on the police. That's for sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have no problem with that. That could happen within a few days.
Yeah,
as far
and
as
I know,
that.
Dan, I think you've been dealing with Jen, and she's got a pretty good handle on this. So definitely keep working with her, and we'll move forward and do it the right way.
Okay, super. One other question, just when it comes to your impounds, you've stated how that's going to happen, and that's great. My question is when it comes to a PI and a person isn't able to look at a list or maybe even communicate with an officer, is it going to be officer discretion that if there's tows on scene that they're going to use them, or are they going to 100% stick by the list and call the next company on the list? If
That
the consumer can't. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
If,
So that
just if
will
the
be our
person,
non-legislated tow. And so the police, we will request a tow on behalf of that person who is not present, or they just are incapacitated and they cannot request that tow. So that is one of our two types of police requested tows that are covered off under our OPP tow program. They will be on the list, and we will
use the list, right?
Yeah, so it would still be a requested tow. It would have to go through the policy.
Yep,
even if there is tows on scene.
Correct.
that's correct.
Yeah, because that's
Okay.
the thing we don't want, right? We don't want them to
Right.
be encouraged to be on scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, you get a few trucks out there, it's just going to hinder traffic. Andy can vouch for that. He's seen enough of that himself and had to deal with it. So, yeah, no, that sounds great. I'll be in contact with Jen to get a hold of that list, and we'll get an answering service set up and have that running very shortly too, if that
Yep.
is okay with everybody.
Yeah,
If
I
that be-
appreciate that, Dan. It sounds like you're working with us, not against us, and that's what we need.
If I may, Rob, and to the OPP as well, that list needs to be fair and equitable, right? So I know not everybody in town who is a tow truck operator likes each other, but we need to make sure that we're allowing everybody to be on that list. So
That's not for you to say, Todd. Like, that actually is some part of the legislation, and that's what Jen's going to deal with, and who gets on there and who doesn't get on there. And there's rules and regulations on how that works. So that'll be part of the operations end of it, and we'll make sure we'll make sure it's fair and equitable. But again, there's rules, and the way that it's going to be done is going to be proper.
I appreciate that, Inspector Ward. What I'm referring to is just making sure that the Towing Association has a list that is.
Well, if they don't want to go through a tow association, I guess that's a municipal decision. Like any tow company can still apply through the application process. So, and that will be a bridge that you have to cross if there is an agreement, I guess, within the municipality.
Just want all those businesses to get along and be respectful. That's all I'm asking.
Absolutely.
And something like this will help a lot too, because even our guys in our own industry, on our own association, have had to undercut each other and stuff. And if we could come up with some pricing in the bylaw, we're all the same price. That's going to take a lot of pressure off even us guys also. But especially at the side of the road, there's nothing worse than bickering about pricing, and the people haven't even got to hospital yet. So
right.
Yeah.
This is good news, and we look forward to the changes.
Yeah, because all of the tow operators, they are going to have to comply with pricing guidelines, and those are legislated under. I was just looking up the section 65.6 of the Consumer Protection Act. And it says TSSO provider shall deliver to the consumer an invoice detailing the tow cost and storage of services provided, which includes an itemized list of services provided and associated costs. TSSO shall accept payment for tow and storage services by credit card, cash, or any other prescribed payment method of the consumer's choice in compliance with the Consumer Protection Act. section 65.15. So on our opp.ca website, there's links to the CPA, the Consumer Protection Act, and it will talk about your billing guidelines within there as well. And that may be something, if you have an issue about the costs, or some are undercutting or some are overcharging, that's a good place to start and have a look at that act in that section.
That's excellent.
Super.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Howes. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Detachment Commander Spong, thank you so much for joining us today too. That was the most interesting ward report we've ever had.
You just gotta give me time, Mr. Chair. Give me time. I'll start to ramp up.
I'll come down and help and talk about traffic all day long with Terry.
Exactly.
Anytime.
That's your new hobby.
Actually, I'm going to leave you on this note. I gotta say, Dufferin County is completely excelling in the area of proactive traffic enforcement across the region. And in fact, I don't know, there's always that kind of competition amongst detachment commanders. It's like, would you slow down?
I'd like to say that I'm responsible for some of that. I was out on a ride along recently and got to decide on whether or not people got tickets or not. It was super exciting.
That is fun.
I heard he was soft.
I let everyone go.
Job for you down there, I can tell you, because I see all the numbers across the region and it's leading by far.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, well, it's very nice to meet you, and thank you again for joining us and your time. It was very informative. That's just wonderful.
All right, take care.
Okay, very good.
Again.
Bye now.
So, ladies and gentlemen, can I have a motion to receive that report? Member McIntosh, Member Rose, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
And I think we've just lost, I know it looks like Ian's back. Ian, are you with us? Okay, perfect.
I am about to depart, but I will call from my car.
Okay, very good. So item 8 is the Victim Support Grant, Human Trafficking. Basically what's happening here is our good friend Mary Lou Archer helped to put this grant together in conjunction with Inspector Ward and his team, and we have been awarded money from the province, and that will go to helping us combat partner violence and human trafficking investigations. So congratulations, Inspector Ward, to you and your team, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say the same to Mary Lou Archer for her help. Did you want to speak to this at all?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was Mary Lou and Jay Moore who worked on that and put it together. And basically what we're going to use the funding for is to set up portable interviews kits. What we found with human trafficking, if we have someone that's suspected of being human trafficked, they're not really interested in coming to the office or detachment to give statements. They want to stay as far away from that as they can, right? For fear of reprise or whatever. So what this money is going to be used to is set up an actual kit that the officers can take and go somewhere private or go to a room at the hospital or somewhere else and set it up. And we still get a very good quality audio video statement. And that way we're looking after the victim. We're giving them what they want and appease them, but they're actually giving us what we need as well. So it's we're looking forward to getting that all set up and utilized.
Oops. That's great. Congratulations. Board members, any commentary on this topic? No? Okay. Could I have a motion to receive that item?
So moved, Ken.
Very good. Ken, seconded by Mary. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. So item 9, and I wanted to include this on the agenda. I thought maybe we'd see if Inspector Ward wanted to comment on it at all, and I didn't do it ahead of time, Inspector Ward, so please feel free to just pass, because I didn't mean to put you on the spot. But this is all about traffic calming, and it was a study that was put forth by the town of Orangeville and our Public Works Department. And just briefly, I'll be quick, but page 18 talks about different ways of calming. So I'm going to say it wrong, Inspector Ward, but chicane, And then there was some curb radius reductions. There was a lateral shift that was provided. These are all pictures that you can see in the documentation. Page 20 talked to roadway narrowing or a raised median. Page 22 to 24 talked about pavement markings that could be done. And then there was an education component and an enforcement component. All of these things are going to be decided upon by the town of Orangeville in conjunction with Inspector Ward and his team. But I just thought it was important to bring it to the board because I know that these two things tend to go together with what we do. So I don't know. I see Member McIntosh would like to speak. Did you want to add some commentary?
Just real quick, if anyone wants to see some of these things in action, excuse me, take a drive to Kitchener. They implement all these sort of things, and it's quite interesting to drive around in Kitchener if any of you have an opportunity, because it's quite interesting, and it works. It actually works. So good to see.
Member Rose.
Yes, Kitchener was a nightmare before, so I'm sure this very expensive method of calming or changing has made a big difference.
Very good. Inspector Ward, did you want to comment on this at all? Just being considerate of you, you don't have to, but.
No, I mean, thank you, Mr. Chair, but I'm a big proponent of the traffic calming because it helps, right? It makes a difference. A lot of them, and what Andy was saying about Kitchener, I was just down there last weekend, and you start to see more and more of it pop up. And it actually, what they're using is the road narrowing with the beams, and it's all hallucination almost, right? Like the road isn't any narrower, but it makes you think it is, and you touch the brakes, right? You slow down. One of the big things, and I know it's costly, but one of the big things, especially like Simcoe County and over Blue Mountains, they put a lot of roundabouts in. Right? Yeah. And those roundabouts very much slow traffic down. It keeps the flow going as well, but it also slows them down. So any type of traffic calming is very, very important, especially nowadays.
We're certainly missing on it right now within our fine little town. So something to look at for sure.
I think we're on the right track.
Okay, very good. Board members, could I have a motion to receive that item then?
So moved.
Member Rose, Member McIntosh, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Board members, if I could, I'm trying to be respectful of Inspector Ward's time at 6:03. I know you've got kind of a hard send off around 6:12 or so to make sure you get to this.
I'm good for another 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, if I could then, why don't we, board members, if I could, we'll skip to item 14, just to make sure that we, if Inspector Ward wanted to weigh in, and same thing with item 15 if Inspector Ward wanted to weigh in. But item 14 is noisy vehicles. And what I wanted to do was just provide a little bit of a verbal update of what's been happening with noisy vehicles. This is certainly something that Inspector Ward and I have discussed. And I know that there's someone on the line who may have a question later on in the meeting. However, I included the Brantford police complaints. There's a piece in there about how Brantford has been approaching this. And basically what's happened in our town is the amount of noise complaints. And I would imagine that Member McIntosh and his role as deputy mayor is probably receiving them as well. But quite a few loud vehicles in town, and what essentially it is they're modified mufflers, and the modified mufflers are loud, they backfire, and they're causing consternation amongst our citizens, especially on residential areas. So anyway, flash forward, I've been to a few meetings now, one in particular that was attended with me by Constable Roach, who was very helpful and informed the people on what could be done and where we could go. And if I'm paraphrasing and taking your thunder here, Inspector Ward, feel free to cut me off. But the idea here is these modified mufflers are illegal. But the issue is the OPP doesn't necessarily hear from certain areas in town about these issues. So unless there's reports filed by the public, the OPP aren't mind readers. How would they know? And we really need to encourage our citizens to be putting in police complaints and addressing that. So that's one piece. And then the secondary piece is that I do have a meeting with the town clerk, and it's later this week. And the idea is to review the bylaw that we currently have as a town and to add potentially modified mufflers to that. And I'm not promising that that's going to be the case. I'm simply getting consultation with her to decide what could potentially be done. But if you read through the bylaw, it's actually interesting. The person who signed that bylaw quite some time ago was on this call. So your worship, Rose was in charge of that at the time, but it just needs a little bit of updating because there's some things now in our society that, you know, they're not mentioned, and modified mufflers is one of them. So at question time, I know Mr. Vipon is on the phone, and we'll call on him at that time and he can ask his question at that time. But Inspector Ward, is there anything that you'd like to add to my long diatribe about noisy vehicles and steps we're taking?
No, I mean, you and I have talked about this, Mr. Chair, and I agree. The problem is it's very time consuming for the police to take an approach on this.
Yes.
We implemented our project Quiet Running over the summer, and again we saw some limited results. Again, I'm hopeful that now that we've implemented this new traffic management unit, and again, right, got to remember it's at this current time it's only 3 members, so, and we're covering all of Dufferin County. But you know, if we do get those calls that you're talking about, right, the public calls in, and we have areas that we can kind of point the tip of the spear there and maybe do some enforcement and some education, and that's kind of what I'm hopeful for. You know, we since your meeting and Jen attended, our unit has attended the Clara and Xena area and done some enforcement. So, I mean, we are going to be proactive on that, and moving forward, we hope to build on it. And again, right, it just comes down to time and manpower to take a good run at the enforcement and education piece. And unfortunately, it seems to be growing, right? It's not just 1 or 2 vehicles, it's constant.
Yeah. Member Rose, did you want to say something?
No, I agree with him. It's been ongoing for years. There's lots of people called when we were on council and would talk about the exact same thing.
Yeah, and we're getting the same calls throughout the county, right?
Yes.
Like, it's not just limited to Orangeville and limited, you know, some even in the smaller areas are still now with, I don't know if it's the kids or what, but there seems to be this new play to make your car as loud as you can. And we've tried to engage over the summer too, and I think we've had this conversation. I've tried to engage Inspector Spong's traffic unit, right, the Central Region traffic unit. They will really come in and go to work, but because of all the issues that happened over in Huronia West with Wasaga Beach, her unit kept getting pulled over there. So I'm hopeful that, you know, maybe into the fall now we can get a little bit of assistance down and start kind of dialing in on it. But it's definitely something that's on our radar. We're not going to let it go, and we're hopefully going to keep building on it and at least calm it rather than let it keep growing.
Very good. Yeah, board members, I know this is a little bit outside of what we would normally do, but we do have the inspector leaving here in 5 minutes, and there's someone on the phone that I think would like to speak to this, and I'd just like to give him an opportunity. Mr. Vipon, Gary, did you want to speak at all to this issue, or do you think we've covered it?
Can you hear me?
We can. Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to
hear you.
I live in the area of Clara and Xena, and about 20 neighbors gathered with Todd, and the complaint was the same. It's loud, and when confronted, the people become belligerent. And in one case, a neighbor of ours, maybe 70 plus years of age, biking with her husband, this kid went by, the husband said, slow down. He got sworn at in language you can only imagine. And then as he got up to the wife on the bicycle ahead, he backfired intentionally. Mm-hmm. And she fell off her bike. And this is if you're a person in the neighborhood trying to help quell the problem, you're putting things at risk. And to get a car and pick out its license and all that sort of thing, it doesn't happen. It's too fast. And because you're usually under stress as it occurs. Basically, we feel that it's easily identified because the sound is deafening when you're nearby. And speaking of sound, what's the mono road that goes just north of Orangeville? Is it Starview or something like that? Anyway, they're complaining now about First Street and Hanson because it just becomes a raceway. And if you attended the Citizen paper once when Cornavalley was writing about Broadway, he just basically said it's a race course and a very loud one. And somebody just now mentioned Wasaga Beach. I don't want Wasaga Beach. I don't want people acting up in their cars, but it's getting worse, not better. And I first was tipped off with this, not ticked off. I was ticked off already, but tipped off when I saw the OPP silent running initiative. And I thought, great. And I haven't seen any reports on a number of contacts with the police, i.e. we stopped so many vehicles for loudness and this sort of thing. Because the OPP report in the Citizen, I think, is the best thing. And so I'm just asking for the police to speak out, even in their reports, and keep mentioning it. And I'm appealing eventually to council, well, I have with Todd, for the council to start saying, we're changing the bylaw, we're getting tough on this. It has to be done. And people read papers, kids react, and I think it's a concerted effort. Thanks for the opportunity.
Very good. Well said. Thank you very much. Inspector Ward, did you want to speak to that at all, or are you? I think.
No, I just through you, Mr. Chair, I thank him for his time, and I agree with everything he said. And we haven't put any stats out in the media yet because our project is still up and running. So I didn't really want to put anything out there kind of half-assed, right? Like when we close the project down, which is probably going to be at the end of October, we'll review it, and then we'll actually put something out in the media on how successful or limitedly successful we were. And you know, as you and I have talked before, we're not going to just let it go. We're going to keep building on it again, and especially try to ramp it up next spring.
That's excellent. Okay. Board members, any further comments, or are we good to go on this one? Okay. Could I have a motion to receive this item, please?
So moved.
Member Rose, have a seconder? Member McIntosh, thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. So, Inspector Ward, again, trying to give you your time. Are you?
We're good. If you want to touch on the next one, I'm good to stay for a few more minutes.
Sure.
I'm trusting that electronics will just jump me right in.
I'm sure it will. Okay, so we're on item 15, board members, and this is homelessness. And there was an item brought to council recently by Mayor Brown, and I thought it was interesting, and it dovetailed nicely with what this board is doing and what the OPP is doing. And basically, the idea was they wanted funding for a men's shelter here within Orangeville. And that item was not passed by council. Instead, it was resolved that it would go back to Dufferin County Council, where housing is that budget is responsible for in that area, and that Orangeville Council was advocating that support be given for a men's homeless shelter. So since then, new news came out today, and I don't know if everyone is aware, but it looks like Choices has made the decision, and I'm just frantically looking here. Choices has made the decision to temporarily suspend its men's shelter. They did that today, but they're going to reevaluate the manner and structure in which we'll be providing men's shelter services and supports going forward. They're going to work closely with Dufferin County to ensure that the supports and services meet the needs of the population. So, you know, a little bit confusing, I guess, but generally speaking, a lot of good nature in terms of trying to solve this and whatnot. Just so everyone knows, the county would suggest that if there was a need, they can meet the need. So when you see someone homeless, and Deputy Mayor or Inspector Ward, please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but if you see someone homeless, they have been approached by the county or I imagine by Inspector Ward's people and asked if they need help or to be brought in, and they have chosen to be out there, and it is their choice. It's a free country. They can do as they wish, but they've chosen to be out. So anyway, that's the end of my diatribe. And if I've misrepresented, please correct me. And Member McIntosh, I'll call on you first. Did you want to speak to this item, sir?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we both agreed on this item from the very beginning that it wasn't really the town's responsibility. The county does currently, as you said, quite correct. They do look after homeless people. If somebody wants to go to a motel, they have vouchers for them and they will put them up in a motel. These people that we see walking the streets don't want that. They refuse the help for whatever reason. They just don't want the help. I just didn't think, and I don't think Councillor Taylor thought that throwing money at this is going to fix the issue. Again, the county is willing to help out, and it looks like we are progressing. Whether we're going to see a full homeless shelter, I don't really know, because at first glance they had one person in there, and that person wasn't from Dufferin County. I don't know if they brought them in from somewhere else, but I've heard since then there's been more. But again, these people don't necessarily want the help that we're offering. It's unfortunate. For whatever issues they're having, they don't want the help. So no matter what we do, it's not going to help them. We have to find a way to help them, I agree, but throwing money at it didn't seem to be the answer.
Okay, thank you, sir. Member Rose, do you want to speak to this item?
Obviously, there's a mental health issue here. I don't know if that's the sort of thing that can be recommended or what the county does about that. But a lot of those people who are refusing help, they have all their own reasons. Everyone has a different reason, but mental health is a huge issue. And about being put in a particular spot is something that is particularly aggravating to some people. There's a gentleman who is on the town streets who has several carts with all his belongings. Very, very sad to see that. But he needs help. I don't know whether he needs to be in an institutional setting or whether he needs to help just to find out what's wrong with him. And I don't know how anybody goes about doing that, but I would think that that's a county issue. My concern about Choices Youth Shelter, and I never did see it in the newspaper, as to before it was thought of a good place for adult men, it was mixed. There were young women in there and there were young boys. What is the current makeup of that? That really is a concern for me.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I can't answer that. So they've shelved that program as of today. But Inspector Ward, did you want to weigh in on this item?
No, I agree with everything that everybody said. I mean, in speaking to Member Rose, that male you're speaking of, we've had numerous calls for him, and he's been spoken to by a variety of different officers and offered numerous, partnerships of help and different agencies and everything else, and he chooses not to. And from the mental health end of it, if he's not a danger to himself or someone else, we can't apprehend. No. So again, right, we kind of, our hands are tied and we refer, but if someone's not willing to take those referrals or take that help, that we're kind of at an end. We just and
I worry about what's going to happen to him in the winter.
And again, the citizens have been good. They call, right? And we don't blow it off. We know who he is, and the officers attend and speak with him and make sure that he's okay. And he's never, to my knowledge, he's never been. There's no violence there. There's no, nothing to be concerned about that way. So again, we're kind of limited in what we can do.
Yeah.
Very good. I guess the message to the public is that our social agencies are aware of who these people are and they're approaching, and the OPP are certainly supporting in that as well. And that's all we can do at this time. Okay, so can I have a motion to receive that item?
So moved.
Member Rose?
Second, Ken.
Ken, thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, very good. So, board members, being respectful, we'll go back to item 10 if we could. Again, do you want to stay to the end here, Inspector Ward, or you?
I'm actually going to remove myself because I better jump on there. I don't want them to think that I have a preference. So.
Of course. Well, make sure you let them know that you do. And when I'm talking,
I think they're going to figure it out when I'm already late. Anyway, thanks everybody. And again, if there's any issues, any questions, by all means, right, reach out and we'll have those discussions.
For sure. And look forward to seeing you on Friday in the joint meeting of the Dufferin County Police Service Board. So you'll be the star of the show there.
Like we talked, Superintendent Stoddart's going to come and do just an introduction. And then Constable Roach is going to kind of, we had a good overview of the program today, but just for the other boards that haven't had anything yet, she'll be able to kind of explain how we're going about it in Dufferin. So
it's very good. Well, I'll play Johnny Carson and do a good introduction.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Thanks everybody.
Good night.
Take care.
Good night. So, board members, we are on item 10, which is the PSB access to information process. So this again is the PSB boxes, and just so everybody remembers, we had to move our PSB boxes from the Orangeville Police Services Board or Orangeville Police Station because it was no longer owned by the Orangeville Police, and we now store that history at the town. And I just wanted to bring up here that if we wanted to go and get the information, on policies and whatnot, that we have to follow the process that is laid out here by Karen Landry, who is the town clerk. So there's no issue with doing it. I just wanted to refresh everybody of what that process is. And I know we have some other business that we're going to want to talk about regarding policies and that information. And this is simply on the agenda to remind people of what the process is if we wanted to get that information. So I think that's about all I have to say on that. Is any questions or commentary from board members? No. Okay. Can we just have a motion to receive item 10 then at this point? Thank you, Member Rose and Member McIntosh. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So item 11 is the Special Investigations Unit. So the SIU annual report comes out, and there was a bit of a mix-up here. It's if you like humor, which I do, and I don't mean any disrespect to Sergeant McLagan, but he was called Chief McLagan in the letter by. I'm sure he will be a chief or an inspector someday. I have no doubt, but he is not now, and he was referred to as chief. And this letter went to him, and essentially what this letter is saying is that we had a memo of understanding with the SIU through the Orangeville Police entity, and they were basically doing work for us, as part of that contract. And at this time, they basically wrote Chief McLagan, who is actually Sergeant McLagan, and let him know that they would be terminating that agreement because the entity no longer existed, and also let him know that there was no outstanding files. There's nothing to complete at this time. All that business was complete. So I just think it's important that A, we recognize it went to the wrong person, and we thank Sergeant McLagan for taking that for us, and B, this relationship is now terminated. So I don't think there's anything to discuss other than to receive the document.
Move to receive.
Thank you, Member Rose. Member McIntosh, all in favor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Very good. Okay, so that puts us on to item 13. And item 13 is our detachment commander, Inspector Ward. We have agreed that we will work together as a board and with him on initiatives throughout the year. And at the end of the year, we'll essentially evaluate the inspector on his contributions and how we got to that. But the first step is, what type of form will we use and how will we go about that? So mentoring that I've received and the board has received is from Dwayne Sprague, who is basically a provincial employee who works with police services boards and provides mentoring for them. And he is going to send us the form, the evaluation form that we could potentially use and discuss with Inspector Ward on that process. So I just wanted to have this on the agenda to make sure that we were still pushing this forward. Again, I think it's important that the board is evaluated on how well we're doing, and I think it's important that the inspector is evaluated, and simply just to say, hey, are you ticking the boxes on the initiatives that you agreed to accomplish on behalf of the citizens? And just a process that I think needs to be followed. So once we get that form, which we'll have here in the next little bit, we'll review as a board and discuss, consult with Inspector Ward, and we'll arrive at next steps.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yep.
Very good. Okay, so I have a motion to receive that document if there's no discussion.
So moved.
Member Rose.
Second, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, very good. So we've done 14 and 15, which brings us to the financial update. And I don't want to confuse the financial update here with the actual finances are further down on the agenda. And I agree they probably should have been amalgamated, but I just didn't think of that at the time. So this portion that we're going to talk to is simply about, there was a question about clearing and what that meant. And I wanted to ensure we caught it as a follow-up. And basically Member Rose, I'm sorry, you look confused. Am I throwing you off?
Just checking I have it on paper, so I'm just looking for it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry if I...
No, number 16. I'm with you.
Yeah, because the finances, maybe I'm throwing people off. Are the finances not further down in this? I've been doing so well this meeting, paying attention. I thought the financials were later on.
It's number 20.
Oh, very good. Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So I am right. So this is just what this is about clearing, and what is the clearing line, and the follow-up was if we could just get some further clarification of what that is. And basically, because of the way our meetings take place, I get the invoices as the chair of the board. I don't have authority to clear them unless it's run by the 5 of us and 3 of us vote to clear any kind of invoice. So they hold, and the town would not want to be behind on the item, so they simply put it into clearing to show that, hey, I think it's on this report, it was $10,000 if I recall. That $10,000 is spoken for. It's a negative, so it's in the clearing account. It's eventually going to come out of one of those categories. Mm-hmm. We as the board just haven't told them where to charge it to yet, and haven't given them authority that it's there. So it simply sits in the clearing account and waits for us. And that's the explanation from the last meeting. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, so it's just a holding account.
Yeah, thank you, Ken.
Okay.
Yeah. So can I just have a motion to receive 16? And I'm sorry, they should put together. I apologize.
Second, Ken.
Okay. Yeah, so Member Rose and Ken, first and second, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so this is an organization of the board meeting minutes and a progress update. And I'm going to turn this over to our very capable secretary to give us an update. Heather, did you want to speak to this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So just an update for the board that the initial formatting has been completed for 2019. I just want to run through it with a fine-tooth comb and perhaps have the vice chair look over it just as a second set of eyes, and then it will be posted. So I will get those to him in a couple of days, and we should have 2019 posted, and then we'll go 2018 and back. And then
Okay.
that project will be completed.
Oh, very good. Sorry, did someone want to speak to that? Yeah,
I
go ahead.
do. It's the vice chair in his car. Thank you, Heather. It would be helpful. We did have a little project plan with some steps and status boxes. It would just be helpful to monitor the progress of this if that was completed and released to the board. So you can do that in-camera session or after this meeting. I just want to make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks.
And what are you saying exactly there, Ian? I just want to, so what I heard the secretary say is she's going to link in with you for a quick check, and then we're going to post it next week, and you want to have like a special meeting to review? Is that what you're saying? Or
No,
I'm just gapping.
This is one of the board's projects, and in order to facilitate the project, I put together a project outline of steps, and the outline of steps had status of each step.
Oh,
and
I see.
It'd be helpful if it was populated so that we could tell, number one, where we are, and number two, who's responsible for what, and number three, when it's going to be completed.
I see. But we're still okay to have Heather do exactly as she'd said, correct? Which is
yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
excellent.
so
I see.
just to confirm, so you want that completed after I'm done?
No, I want to complete it as we go.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, it's a status update piece, right?
If you look at the outline, it will become crystal clear.
Okay, maybe it's not, and we could just take, is this something we're going to cover off and close, the item list?
It's part of the board's project plan, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to cover that. That list comes back to us in close. So maybe we can just make sure everybody understands what we're talking about in closed session and what expectations are. But the big message here is that these board meeting minutes are just about done, and our very capable secretary is going to post next week. And what year are you posting? Sorry, Heather?
2019.
2019. Okay, very good. Very good. Okay. Member Rose, if I may, you look like you want to say something or ask a question. Okay, excellent. Thank you. So based on that, we're going to talk about the absolute details of the list in close, not to bore everyone, but this one is taken care of. So could I have a motion to receive this item then?
So moved.
Member Rose? Member McIntosh, thank you, sir. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This next one, ladies and gentlemen, is it occurred to me when Inspector Ward was speaking last time in our September meeting that we were receiving a large amount of fire alarm calls, and it was simply in his quarterly report where the number of charges were coming in, and basically what the inspector was sharing with us is that these are going to go as calls for service. And if we think about our billing model, at the end of the 3-year term, they're going to take our average of the 3 years and then determine what our number of calls is, and that'll be the cost of the town of Orangeville for OPP in year 4. And so if we're receiving calls for false alarms that are going off with cars or houses or that sort of thing, it just seemed to me that we should probably have a discussion as a board, and potentially we wouldn't make the decision, but we would influence council that potentially we should be putting in a bylaw to charge people who have these false alarms so that it doesn't fall on the greater taxpayer. And I just simply wanted to discuss this with the board and see what people's thoughts are. And Deputy Mayor, you look, excuse me, Member McIntosh, you look like you'd like to speak to this item, please, sir.
With all due respect, I'd like to correct you. You said fire alarms?
It was alarms. It was
yes.
alarms. Thank you,
yes.
sir.
Because I think I mentioned it last board meeting. When we get a fire alarm, we do have the means to correct it, to make them fix their alarm. with police alarms, there is no legislation to require them to fix it. So absolutely, I would support some type of financial repercussions for these places that continually have alarms. Orangeville Police used to have something years ago where they would respond to the first 2 or 3 alarms, but then they would stop responding to them. I never did like that because I think there's an awful liability there. So the financial penalty would certainly be something I could support on council.
Very
Thank you.
good. Would other board members like to weigh in on this item, or no? Okay, yes, Member Rose.
Who would be responsible for deciding whether this was an accidental alarm that went off, or that it was somebody who wasn't monitoring their system? Or like, who will decide as to who will make that decision as to what kind of an alarm that was? I can understand Andy when he says you get 3 from the same place, that's overkill. But I'm just wondering if it's accidentally done, would you still charge them?
Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to have a policy done up, and maybe it's the first time you get a warning, and the second time, I don't know, and by the third time there's some sort of fine. Member McIntosh, do you have more meat to add to it than that?
Just that you can usually tell if it's a false alarm or if it's activated by something. You know, if the police show up and everyone's looking at you like you got 2 heads, chances are it's a false alarm. There are ways to dissect it, but it would have to be in the bylaw.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very good. To board members, since we're not the body that would make the decision, the body that would influence, I thought of 2 ways that we could go about this if we're in agreement. And one is we could write a letter from the board to the town of Orangeville requesting that they consider this. Or 2 is we could simply deputize the deputy mayor and the councillor who sit on this board to bring it as a notice of motion to the council. And I think those are the 2 ways. And Member McIntosh, if you had a different one, or Member Rose, in your experience, of the best way to do it. But if we agree,
the second option is the best. It's the fastest.
It is. Yeah, and we could just say on behalf of the Police Services Board.
Yeah.
Okay. Ken and Ian, did you want to weigh in on this item, or are you fine?
That was me saying I agree with Mary.
Okay. Member McIntosh, do you want to make a swath at writing it, or how do you want to? I guess what I'm thinking is you and I should maybe agree on the writing, and then we could share it with the board through email declaration and just say yes or no. And then we would send it into the clerk. Do you want to take the first swath at it, or do you want, what would be your preference?
Well, we'll figure something out between us.
Okay, very good.
We'll get the wording right.
So I guess we would need a motion that speaks to the fact that you're deputizing Member McIntosh and Member Taylor to communicate with council about the importance of this issue.
So moved.
Very good. So Member Rose is making that motion. Heather, did you get that motion, or was I too fast?
Could we double check that, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. So the board will deputize Member McIntosh and Member Taylor to bring a notice of motion to council that asks them to consider, I guess, a more robust plan regarding false alarms, so that they're not billed in the OPP billing model. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah. Good.
Chair, if you could confirm, I heard Member Craker's name mentioned. Was that?
No.
I'll second it.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Second it, sure. Okay. But it's Member McIntosh and myself that'll take it to council.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we had Member Rose and Ken, you're going to second, and all in favor, I guess, is where we are.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
very good. Okay, thank you, everyone. So that gets us on to adoption of previous item 19, which is adoption of the minutes from the previous board meeting. Could I have a motion to receive these minutes?
So moved.
Very good. Member Rose, Member McIntosh, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, item 20, special member claims for remuneration. It's always a tough word to say. And I don't think we have any in this meeting, so no forms being submitted. So I don't think we need any motions to receive. And then we're on to the Police Services Board financials, which is item 20. So those items, I think my only commentary is I think we probably got a little bit lucky, but there was some controversy at the end of last year as we were doing the budget. And the budget was, there was some concern about the legal line. And it looks like that planning was very prudent. And we're coming in, we're under budget right now, which is great, but we're on pace. And I think we're doing very well on that line, and I'm really glad the treasurer gave us the advice that she did, and we took it. So that would be my commentary on the financials. Everything else looked fine to me.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Looks good.
No? Okay. Motion to receive the up-to-date financials.
So moved, Ken.
Ken, thank you. Member Rose?
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Dan, at this time, it's question period. I think we've probably gotten through most of them, but if there's anybody on the line at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nobody new is on the line. However, we do still have Mr. Howe, so I'm not sure if there's another question or comment.
Sure. Rob, would you like to, did you have anything further you wanted to add, or are you good?
He's on mute.
Okay, looks like we'll assume he's good. So, no questions. Presentations, item 22, none. No delegations. Correspondence. The correspondence piece is interesting. This is a letter from Mr. Ramsey, and Mr. Ramsey is asking that we have further enforcement of parking at ODSS school. And basically what's happening is people in the morning and in the evening are not respecting the signs that are there. You know, and it's causing consternation amongst the residents, and you know, it's not a very safe area to be when people aren't respecting those signs that are clearly put there for a reason. So anyway, he has contacted myself, and I believe he contacted either the mayor or council, I can't remember. And that has been followed up with the police. So the police are aware, and bylaw is aware. It is a bylaw. It is a bylaw issue. So bylaw will be enforcing that bylaw. The OPP will support as needed, but it will be town bylaw that will be out ticketing. So that's ODSS, and there's certainly going to be focus on that area moving forward. Yes, Member Rose.
Quick question. Is there still an overflow area at Tony Rose Arena for the parking of cars by students at ODSS?
I'm not aware.
Oh, it used to work.
Would you be up on that?
I don't know myself.
I don't know for sure, but I don't think anything's changed.
Okay.
So they could park there. It's
As far as I know. As far as I know.
Yeah, lots of times, Member Rose, this is drop off and pick up. So
yes,
fair enough. 3:30 or so, there's issues, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Can I have well, do we need to receive the correspondence? I guess we do, don't we?
So moved.
Let's do it. Motion to receive the correspondence, Member Rose. Ken, you're gonna second that?
Sure.
All right. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. And to Mr. Ramsey, thank you so much for bringing that forward to us. So we've been through all the reports, and under new business, the vaccination policy. I guess I just want to bring it to everyone's attention that the town of Orangeville has a vaccination policy, and that was implemented this week. We can certainly discuss in closed what our response will be as a police services board. But I wanted to share with everybody that boards are encouraged, just so the public is aware, boards are encouraged to come up with their own policy that will affect board members. And this board will have to do the same. I have heard and linked in with the library board, and what the library board did was simply adopt the Town of Orangeville policy as their own. So we'll meet in closed, and then we'll report in open on what that is. But just for members of the public, that will just affect police services board members. But we'll have to discuss it and then come back and report on that discussion. So I just wanted to make that clear under new business. Has anybody else have anything under new business?
Can we also get a copy of that policy too in our next meeting?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Member Rose?
As an aside to that, is there any thought being given to the board meeting in person or actually being in the same room for meetings? I know that the school board is doing like a hybrid model where some of the school board trustees are actually in person and some of them are still virtual, depending on health and what have you. And I'm wondering if we're anywhere close to going back to normal.
Yeah.
So that would tie in with the vaccination thing.
Yeah, as long as we're all vaccinated, we can get into town facilities. If one, and I'm not asking, please don't answer.
Oh.
If you're not vaccinated, you can't get into a town facility. So that would be part of it. Number two is we'd have to have the technology, and three, we'd have to have a building that we could get into. Mr. Bonato, you being on the phone here, how do you feel about that? Do you think we have the technology to meet live? Could we possibly do that, or?
So through you, Mr. Chair, if all members are able to come into the building, into Town Hall and use the council chambers, then yes, we do have the technology to meet live and live stream. We have a model in place to implement the hybrid model right now. Unfortunately, what's delaying us is the effects of COVID, and we can't get we have all the technologies on back order right now that we actually need to put into the council chambers. It was supposed to come in November. We ordered it in August. It was supposed to come in November. That may now get delayed until January, and we're just essentially waiting on that. We do have a plan for the hybrid model, but it's just we can't get the technology right now.
Thank you.
Okay, so
my only sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead.
My only concern is if you are a member and you have someone close to you who's immune compromised.
Hybrid.
Do we then continue allowing them to continue to meet electronically, given that flexibility, if that's the case?
That's the hybrid model.
Yeah.
So Mr. Chair, I think Ken's absolutely right. I think we should be looking at this. We could talk about it in camera. We should be looking at as an invitation, a voluntary in-person attendance, and not force anybody. There's going to have to be a screening questionnaire that is filled out, where the person has to answer questions, just like when we go into a commercial establishment to sort of pass. And I think in addition to the policy we adopt, should do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And are you saying also too, Ian, have the flexibility that if someone doesn't feel comfortable because someone close to them is immune compromised, they can do the hybrid model?
Absolutely. Anybody that does. I mean, I'm just thinking because we just did this for the Financial Services Tribunal. Anybody who doesn't feel comfortable for whatever reason participating in person can participate electronically. And the screening questionnaire will provide the other people who would like to participate in person with the information to see whether or not they're comfortable with the person attending who's filled out the screen.
Okay.
So it's got to be informed.
Member McIntosh, did you want to weigh in on this one?
Just that I know on the hydro board we talked about doing this, and we made a call to the health unit, and that was the end of that. we still had to wear masks and everything, and it just didn't seem worth it to meet in person when you've got to sit there with a mask on. So I would just recommend that before we make a decision that we do contact our local health unit and just get their opinion, how many people in a room and whether masks are still required.
That's great. That's great.
So there are room capacity. The province has issued a series of guidelines. One of them is on room capacity, and I think the room capacity guideline indicates 50%, but that means you have to sort of look at the square footage of the room and the seating capacity, half it, and then make sure that everybody is sitting in a socially distanced way. And the masking is also, you're right, Andy, the masking is an important aspect of it, and that can be discussed, right? If people are comfortable meeting and distanced enough, and based upon being double vaxxed and everything, all the other information, then some meetings proceed with masks removed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wanted the public to know that we know our responsibility as a board, and we need to have a policy, and we will. So that was the point of my new business. Okay. I guess we need to go back into closed and finish off our day. And I guess my suggestion would be, we're 3 hours in now. Could we take 9 minutes and meet at 7 o'clock and just have a little bit of me time for a few minutes, and we'll go back into closed at 7, and we'll just, Heather, is there, did you put a new link at 7 o'clock, or do we go into the old link, or what's best?
Yes, so there is a new link for extension.
Okay.
This will be occurring, it will say 6 p.m., but I will adjust it right now to say 7.
Okay, great. And just for board members, there was a request to have the policy link, and I see that our very capable secretary, Heather, has sent that out already. So you have that in email already. Very good. So thank you, Heather, for doing that.
No problem.
Okay.
You also have the, sorry, Mr. Chair, the items concerning the evaluation for Inspector Ward in your inbox.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Heather.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes. Can I have a seconder for that? Member McIntosh, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll see you at 7 o'clock, everyone.
Excellent.
Thank you.